India has hit out at China and Pakistan at the United Nations Security Council meeting on terrorism, criticizing both countries on several counts from double standards to hypocrisy. India's ambassador to the United Nations, Ruchira Kamboj, at the meeting said that it is most regrettable that genuine and evidence-based listing proposals pertaining to some of the most notorious terrorists in the world are being placed on hold, further asserting on how double standards have affected the credibility of the sanctions regime at an all-time low.
It is most regrettable that genuine and evidence-based listing proposals pertaining to some of the most notorious terrorists in the world are being placed on hold. Double standards and continuing politicization have rendered the credibility of the sanctions regime at an all-time low.
Now, earlier this year, China had put a hold on United Nations listing of Pakistan-based Lashkar-e-Taiba's second command, Abdul Rahman Maki. In the past two, Beijing had put a hold on listing of Jaish-e-Mohammed's Maulana Masood Azhar. And during that time, it took New Delhi almost a decade to list him as a United Nations listed terrorist. Meanwhile, on Pakistan, the ambassador pointed to the state hospitality for terrorists. This despite being listed under the United Nations Security Council 1267 Sanctions Committee. The UN's 1267 committee lists one of the largest numbers of Pakistanis as international terrorists. These include Masood Azhar, Hafiz Syed, Zaki-ur-Rahman, many of whom are responsible for terror attacks in India, including the 26/11 Mumbai terror attack. During her address, the Indian envoy also outlined the recent attacks on a Gurudwara in Kabul, calling it highly alarming. Kamboj further emphasized on how the links between groups listed by the United Nations Security Council as well as the terror groups operating out of Afghanistan pose a direct threat to the peace and stability of the region. India is currently the chair of the United Nations Security Council Counter-Terrorism Committee for the year 2022 and will be hosting a special session of the United Nations Counter-Terror Committee in Mumbai and Delhi on the 28th and 29th of October.
The report of the Secretary General under consideration that terrorist threats are on the rise globally.
And for more on this, our principal diplomatic correspondent Sidhan Sibal has sent us this report from New Delhi.
A strong statement made by the Indian envoy to UN, Ruchira Kamboj, on the issue of terrorism at the United Nations Security Council during that meeting which took place on Tuesday evening India time. We know that the message was sent to Islamabad, to Beijing, to Taliban in Kabul and to United Nations as well. The Indian envoy pointed that the sanctions regime is facing a credibility crisis in terms of holds being put on by countries without any justification. This, of course, is a message to China, which recently put a hold on listing of a Pakistan-based terrorist Maki. The hold had been put for a period of 6 months. But largely when it comes to Islamabad, we know the state hospitality that was mentioned by the Indian envoy was to terrorists like Dawood Ibrahim, who continue to roam freely in Pakistan. But message was clear that there should not be any double standards when it comes to the issue of terrorism, and world needs to speak in one voice over this issue. With video journalist Chandrasekhar Siddhansipal for WION in New Delhi.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.